I know for sure that there's always the point where people want to talk to a human being. And I don't think that there's anything that will replace that connection.
Welcome to the Coaching Revealed podcast series. I'm one of your podcast hosts, Austin Matzel. In this episode of Coaching Revealed, IOC Executive Director Jeff Hull sits down with AI coaching consultant and speaker Rebecca Rutschmann to explore the impact of AI on the coaching industry. Rebecca and Jeff discuss her early work designing AI coaching tools and the impact of natural language processing on the continually changing landscape. Jeff and Rebecca discuss not only the increasing sophistication of artificial intelligence, but also the current gaps that exist within these tools and the components that differentiate them from human capabilities. Rebecca also touches on the evolving expectations from clients as a result of changing technology, along with concerns involving AI-generated coaching avatars and broad ethical considerations. With the rapid evolution of AI, Rebecca highlights the value coaches provide through their humanity and ability to hold space and create nuance. As the coaching industry adapts, Rebecca envisions a hybrid model where AI enhances but doesn't replace the role of human coaches. Thank you for tuning into Coaching Revealed and our new series on artificial intelligence. Let's get started.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Coaching Revealed, the podcast from the Institute of Coaching. My name is Jeffrey Hull. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute of Coaching, and I'm really excited to be here kicking off our new series on the impact of technology in coaching, and in particular, how AI is taking the profession by storm, and whether or not that is a good thing or a bad thing, but certainly it is impactful and continuously changing. And we were going to have experts in the space, researchers, practitioners, consultants, and coaches that are well-versed in the impact of AI and how we as coaches can get in sync with what's happening, can prepare ourselves, and hopefully be effective as we learn to work with this new technology. And today, I'm very excited to have an expert in the house, someone who has a background in computer science and coaching, which is kind of a rare combination. Her name is Rebecca Rutschmann, and she runs an organization called Viva la Coaching. And she has a whole series of training programs and other research activities related directly to the impact of artificial intelligence and coaching. If you haven't heard of Rebecca, let me just give you a quick background and then I'll jump in with her. So her passion is to inspire others around AI and coaching. So needless to say, she's somewhat of an advocate, but she also cautions us, and we'll talk a little bit about that, around the impact of artificial intelligence and technology. She's a keynote speaker. She networks in all areas around how AI is impacting the coaching space. She holds a degree in international business with a major, as I said, in computer science and media. And she's been working as a coach since 2008. She's involved and has published several research papers on coaching and AI, and contributes to the industry as a VP, Vice President of Accreditation for the German EMCC board and the EMCC Global Work Group on upskilling coaches, mentors, and supervisors on AI and technology. So welcome, Rebecca. We're happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And it's interesting when someone's reading out your bio for the last year. So
is there anything that I missed?
I think more like of a fun fact, I was part of a Facebook preferred developer program when the Cambridge Analytica scandal happened, seeing how algorithms can go completely wrong and then they cut it off and we were all out all of a sudden and nobody knew what was happening. But yeah, interesting times. And I love living in these interesting times that we have now. Like 4 or 5 years ago, everybody was like, oh, AI in coaching, that's never going to be a thing. And here we are, 2025. So it's really interesting that everybody's now really talking about it.
Not only talking about it, but I think it's safe to say that just in the last year, the evolution has just picked up speed. And, you know, the level of comfort that the main population that we often work with is in terms of exposure and usage of some of the main tools like ChatGPT and Claude and others that are becoming well known. And I'm really curious to just hear your perspective. I've had the opportunity to be with you in a conference for EMCC in Denmark. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you into this conversation early, because, there are very few folks that are really paying attention to the accelerated evolution and how it impacts coaching. I know some of this is controversial. I've seen some of the online dialogues that are going on between well-known thought leaders in the coaching space, and we're not looking to have definitive answers. But I'm curious as to, you say it goes all the way back to Cambridge Analytica, which was quite a controversy back in the days of our elections a couple of years ago in the US. But tell me, how did you get involved with AI? How did you get into this space?
It just actually happened because, I always worked in the IT industry, and I mainly worked with teams most of my life when I did coaching. So internally in companies, I worked for Nero burning ROM back in the times when we still burned CDs. That's not happening anymore. My kids have no idea what that is. Yeah, so even a USB stick is a mystery for them sometimes. That's how fast, technology is really evolving. And in 2007, it was just like, we wanted to do a design sprint with some friends in the agile coaching community to see how we can make coaching more available for our team members. Because as an agile coach, when you coach a whole team, it's imbalanced quite often when you then also coach individual members. And there is a huge lack of agile coaches back in the days. And then we just met for 5 sessions in the afternoon, over a few weeks, and tried to work on a solution on how we could do that. And we came up with a chatbot. That technology was just kind of like evolving. So the first screen designs we did, and it was just a fun project. We all knew how to build stuff like that, or had the friends to do it. And then I entered just for fun. Someone said, "Oh, you should pitch this at the accelerator. They're just looking for new startups." And we pitched it and we won. And all of a sudden we had a spot in a 1-year accelerator program. And we had to make that commitment, like who of us will now kind of like enter the accelerator and take this idea further or not. And then 2 of us decided we'll just take it further. So let's see where this is going to end up. And that's how Evoge kind of like got founded back in the days, around the same year that Nikita Blanche started his coach Vici as well. So it was like super early days. There was no ChatGPT around. We had to still script everything by hand, with lots of love back in the days, because AI was not there yet. We constantly did experiments using AI or latest AI technologies, but they were just not yet good enough for a coaching conversation. And like just detecting emotions you didn't want to do, because it's not in a coaching mindset that we tell people what they feel and how they feel. So that's something that we didn't really want to do. And natural language processing wasn't really there yet to have a nice, fluid conversation. Yeah, you remember the chatbots 5-6 years ago, the customer support chatbots. They didn't always really get what you wanted. So they couldn't even really properly identify what your coaching topic would be, or support you in that. So that's why we started with scripting. We built then our own software around it, and then went straight into launching it early 2020. We demonstrated it at the Web Summit in Lisbon in late fall, November, I think it was 2019. And then Corona hit. So you remember beginning of March 2020, we all know what happened. And then all the HR companies went on, all the pilots that we had, they went on what we called it turtle mode. Yeah, they were kind of like, not sure what's going to happen and how to do this. And then we decided to support coaches with that technology that we built, to build their own kind of like AI, kind of like chatbots for coaching. And so that's how it kind of like evolved. And that's how I ended up then being the responsible person for product and went right into technology. I always loved technology. And it was for me, like for Nikita Blanche, like research is the candy shop. My candy shop is working with technology. So I just loved exploring all these large language models and seeing what they're capable of and trying to find their limitations and the capabilities and compare that to to coaching. Yeah. And can it really match any, part of a coaching conversation? And that's how it all started.
So it sounds like you were somewhat optimistic about the potential for AI early on.
Yes, because we saw early on, it was 2020, 21 when the first release of GPT-3 happened. No, it was late 2020, 2021. And you could already see, like when you knew about technology, what's about to happen. And I remember our CTO back then, he was just like so enthusiastic about it. And usually tech people are a little more down to earth. Yeah. So, and when they go like, wow, this is something amazing that's going to happen out there. We knew it will happen. It's just as a startup hard to hold on because it takes a long time. But yes, we knew that something like this is going to pop up at some point, but ChatGPT surprised even us.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're saying how back in 2020 you were enthusiastic, but you knew it was going to take a long time, and you were already starting to customize and develop your own with a team chatbots. And yet here we are in early 2025. Am I exaggerating by saying that it's actually been a revolution literally within the last 24 months? I mean, I now have clients who are telling me they're having conversations with their ChatGPT every single day about every single thing. And they're not even just using the written version, they're having conversations, that it now has a voice and it can sound like a calming therapist or a coach. And I hate to say that it's all good because I think that would be also an inappropriate exaggeration.
Yeah, it would.
But I'm curious, like, given the history that you have, which is much deeper and longer than most of us in that space, I guess I'm starting at the end and we'll work back. But are you still as enthusiastic, or now where do you sit?
I mean, like, new technology always comes with both sides, no? There's always the risk side and then there's the enthusiasm. And I'm not a doomer and I'm not a hustler. I try to be as realistic as possible. And I think there are amazing possibilities, but we can already see a certain fatigue that always happens with new technology too, when it hits the market. And that's where you say, like with text especially. Yeah. So voice is something that I see is really, like, once voice got really, really good, and that was last year. So early last year, the voice interfaces have gotten much better, but not for longer conversations. Like after 15 minutes, it kind of like starts losing the context a bit sometimes as well. I think that was a huge change. But I am also a bit cautious about where is this taking us for coaching, because everything now, again, is called coach. Yeah, and now it's an AI coach. What has been called a coach before, and nobody. I mean, we did a research, not like a real academic research, but if you look on LinkedIn and you look for the amount of coaches that you can find that call themselves a coach on LinkedIn, I think it's 5.2 million. Yeah, when you just use the search, if you know that ICF claims they have 140 or 50,000 accredited coaches worldwide. You see the gap. And even if you add all the other coaching bodies to it, you're maybe likely to end up between around 300,000, maybe accredited coaches. So what happens to the other almost 5 million people out there? Yeah, where they get training, what kind of coaching are they offering? So, and that just amplifies a problem that we already had, because all these people are now building also AI coaches. If you ask a normal person out on the street, what is a coach? You get so many different answers on that. So we don't really know what we get. And then with the avatars that are coming up now, that, like you can clone yourself as well in a sometimes, I find it creepy. I mean, I have a version as well, a very good one, I hope, of myself. But I see the highest risk in these things when it comes to cloning your identity. Yeah? And that's where I find we need to explore more, work more, and learn more and do more research on that impact. Yeah, that it might have in the market. So
yeah, I think you're bringing up two key things. One is that this AI revolution prompts us to have to step back and really redefine, or maybe for the first time, more deeply define what it means to actually be a coach. And then the second thing is that this ubiquitous use of the term AI and chatbot also becomes problematic, because I'm finding there are Marshall bots, Marshall Goldsmith and his chatbot that's all about him and his expertise, which is obviously very rich and deep. The curiosity that I have around that is that those chatbots to me are not coaches. They are sources of knowledge. Like they're almost advisors. That also gets thrown into this pile called coaching. What is your current way of defining what is coaching with AI? Like when people are asking you as somewhat of an expert in this space, coaching in AI, what does that even mean?
Ready to advance your coaching practice? Join the Institute of Coaching and tap into the world's leading resource for coaching science and professional development. With over 4,000 members across 130 countries, the IOC offers invaluable networking opportunities with an elite global coaching community and innovative learning to broaden your knowledge and keep you at the forefront of coaching best practices. Engage in cutting-edge learning events with world-renowned coaching scholars, from webinars and seminars to discussion groups, research projects, and more. Try any membership free for 30 days. Use promo code IOC Podcast and visit instituteofcoaching.org/join to get started.
That's the good question. I don't have an answer for that. Yeah, because I don't want to go out there and define what AI coaching is. I mean, the ICF has just released the standard paper where I don't know if you've seen the discussion on LinkedIn as well, where it's apparently okay to give advice and suggestions. And that was a new standard paper released by the ICF. And it caused a lot of discussions on, do we have different standards for AI coaches than we have for coaches? Or like, does it change the competencies around it? But then if you ask clients, we did some research, and I know you're going to have Jonathan Passmore on the podcast too. We did some research where we used AI chatbots also for leaders, so middle management. And they were pissed off when the AI coach didn't give them any advice or suggestions. We had about 20 to 30% of the transcripts where people got annoyed by it because they didn't know. And we actually, in the contracting in the beginning, we told them that this conversation won't give them advice or suggestions, but they still expected that. So there is that user expectancy when they are using these, at least technologies. That's what the research we did. But it's interesting to see in the end, it's the user or the client who wants something, who needs support, who needs help. And how is that going to change the industry? Are we going to move away? Yeah, I know that there are other chatbots out there that offer these scales where you can say, I want more mentoring, or consulting, or more coaching. So more asking deeper reflective questions. And I think that this is going to change maybe also our way of thinking, what we are offering the user. And I think a lot of coaching in this world, maybe not according to some of the coaching bodies, is done in a mix of this. Is it just going back to what's really happening out there anyways already? Do we have to redefine the standards that we try to push now for years? I think it's an interesting time because we need to think about what coaching means for ourselves. The associations need to rethink about how they are measuring good coaching, and it will change the market.
I mean, as maybe a coaching purist myself, and as someone who, grew up with the profession over 20 years and has been affiliated with the Institute of Coaching, which is committed to developing the underlying evidence, the science of coaching. The key for me has always been, and I'll just make it for me, I won't speak for the whole institute, but that advice giving often flows through the coaching engagement, but the key distinction is to actually identify what you're doing, as opposed to just assuming with the client that when you're doing mentoring, when you're doing advising, when you're doing advice giving, or when you're doing reflective questioning, that you shouldn't assume your client knows what that means. And that as a coach, it's appropriate to actually declare, we're switching into an advisory space. And if that's okay, then that's okay. right? Especially now with ChatGPT becoming, and others similar, becoming ubiquitous in the consumer space, that the natural tendency for clients is to look for answers. That's what they do, is they give you an answer to your question, basically. You go in and you have something you want to know, and they take what Google has been doing for years and they just ratchet up the capability and the speed and the depth and the ability to interact so that you're getting a dialogue which appears to be coaching style, but it has lots of depth and answers for your questions. And so all of a sudden, whether we like it or not, I think most consumers are going to start to think of that that's what coaching is, the expert that knows the answers. So how do we work through that minefield?
But we always had that, like when you look at where coaching is actually coming from, and I know you have, you're coming from the US. I mean, like a coach in the US, everybody would think of a football coach. Yeah, your coach in school is your soccer, football. Oh, they don't help you with your self-reflection. Yeah, they help you with your training plan. Yeah, they try to get you ramp up your skills and the sports, and it's also mental but also physical. So it's always been a combination. Or like in the very early days, I mean, a coach, like a carriage, brings you from A to B. Yeah, and it didn't define if it's only through self-reflection or not. So I find that always an interesting discussion on who owns coaching, because I would say a lot of different industries think that they own coaching. I'm going to my CrossFit coach. They're called coaches. They don't call themselves trainers. So it's a coach. So it's always been the confusion in the market. And I know that there are a lot of voices who always were calling out for reinventing coaching or finding a new word for it. Yeah, what we call professional coaching.
Our friend David Drake is probably the biggest proponent of pushing toward redefining what coaching means.
Yeah, and he's also one of those who just there for the client with whatever they need and what shows up. Maybe that's a good approach too. Like I always say, it will be the client in the end who decides what they actually want, because they are in need of that service, however that service is going to look like.
Let's be candid and jump into the worst case scenario. Let's go worst and then hopefully towards the best, right? So I think the worst case scenario along the path that you're following is that the ubiquity of providing advice or answers that the consumer is getting more and more used to, if it becomes so good at it, which is really where we're headed, the consumer will think, I don't need a self-reflective coach anymore. I can just go onto ChatGPT or the latest version of Claude or whatever it is, and I can get help, whatever that means, with all of my issues. That could potentially be really destructive to the coaching industry. And yet many of my colleagues, and me too, I suppose, to a certain extent, are sort of jumping on the bandwagon and saying, oh, well, let's figure out a way to integrate the coach bots into our practice. But are we doing ourselves a bit of a scary service to jump on the bandwagon? Because we could be doing ourselves out of a job.
What happens if you don't jump on? Are you going to stop it?
No, you're going to be out of a job either way, right?
So why would you not see on how to best integrate it?
Right. But then I think you get to the core question, which always comes up, really, which is what retains distinctive human-to-human value in coaching?
And that's the key question, no? In the end.
And what's your sense?
Having seen a lot of user interactions already early, starting 2019 with chatbots, I know for sure that there's always the point where people want to talk to a human being. And I don't think that there's anything that will replace that connection. Like I see all the conversations people are having, the answers are coming really fast. People are like, now I feel like I have to write something again. Yeah, they feel forced by a machine to answer as quickly, which they can't. And they sometimes wish the machine would answer slower, so they actually think there's another human being there, or it gives them time to actually process. We humans can't process as fast as AI can. And they always miss that connection after a while. You see after 15 to 20 minutes of an interaction with chatbots or also with ChatGPT, that people get, like I said, there's a fatigue, bored, like it's that connection is not there, that even when we talk now here online, we have, because we see each other and we know there is another presence in the room. A machine is not a presence. There is no real connection. There's no real presence. There's nobody just holding the room for you. Like what David Drake can do beautifully, like just being there, holding the room. And AI can't do it because it's always there to output something immediately. Yeah, I tried to prompt it so many times of giving users more time. Yeah, to do it slower, to feel or see, like when someone maybe just needs a just to go deeper in their own processing. The AI just can't do it, not yet. And I don't see that it's going to be able to do it soon because the large language models, they're generating models. So they're programmed to generate something new all the time. They're not there for just holding the space. That's not what's in their system. It doesn't work.
I think that's really profound. I think you're pointing to two primary drivers of human-to-human contact retaining its core value, one being space and presence and time to reflect, and the other being that humans, if you think about the way our friend David Drake would constitute the conversation around coaching, it's not always about finding the answer. It's about exploring possibilities and a way of being. There's really, I don't know how AI will evolve, but how you be in the world is not something that ChatGPT is going to converse with you. They may jump to some philosophical answer and start going down a path. It'll be a linear path. It won't be a holistic path. It won't involve emotions, mind, body, soul, physical presence.
And it doesn't generate something new. It generates only something out of all the knowledge it has in the background. It doesn't come out with, completely out of the box ideas, that we humans can. I've been talking about this with my husband during our ski holidays on the drive back, that he is also in IT. That's one of the huge things with the latest research that was coming out. And will we have AGI soon? Yeah, and AGI maybe yes on a cognitive level in some ways.
What is AGI?
Like artificial general intelligence, which different people define differently. In general, you would say that AI can really replace every aspect of a human being, which also includes usually robots, which is the hardest bit to do. But even if you would only define it on a cognitive level, because they're currently discussing, is AGI now coming in 10 years or in the next 1 to 3 years? Yeah, that's the big, huge topic at the moment everywhere. Discussing the interesting ideas. And there's, of course, again, the doomers and the hustlers, like Sam Altman saying it's coming within the next 1 or 2 years. They have a lot of investors in the background, that invest a lot of money, that they bet on that happening. And then you have the ones that say, no, we've been working in computer science and neuroscience for such a long time. We don't see that it can actually match, human intelligence on that level within the next 5 to 10 years. So it's huge discussions going on. And I think on the cognitive side, it can mimic a lot. But what we humans can do, like the great inventors of our time, AI can't do that because it doesn't come up with something that has never been there. It can't. Because it's only running on data that it already has.
That's the aha moment, which is a purely a human experience coming from flow.
We don't know if AI might be able to do it at some point, but I don't see it happening soon. They're large language models. So they work on human language. They learn from human language. So the current approach we're taking in AI, and that's my personal perspective, is not going to bring us to AGI because we're still training the AI on a lot of bullshit data that we humans produced. Let's be clear about that.
But those on the other end of the argument would say that there's a transitional moment that we may be reaching soon where AI will train itself.
It already learns and it can already train itself. It does. We have a lot of synthetic data already generated by AI, and it trains itself on that data as well. But what I learned early in my days when in IT is in data science, it's always shit in, shit out. So should we let it train itself on biased data in the first place? Fufuli, one of the most amazing researchers at Stanford University, She generated the first image data set that is less biased. About when was it? More than 10 years ago now. And I think we need the same approach also for current AI models. We can't just like train it on faulty data in the first place. We have to first curate the data that we train it on to reach a more, what you said, pure data sets that are really also incorporating values, yeah, and not just also a lot of data from, for example, Reddit, yeah, where you learn that you need glue on your pizza for the cheese to stick. I mean, like, do we really want to have AI training itself on data like that? Where are we going to end up, at some point?
That's a really good example. I'm working as an advisor to, and many of us are now, connecting ourselves with different startups because we realize that we not only need to maintain our knowledge base, but we need to become more facile. Right. So I'm curious what you think about a positioning that one of the companies that I'm working with has taken, which is it's called Sherlock, Super Sherlock AI. You may have heard of it. And one of the things that they've positioned themselves as, which I find interesting, so I'm curious to get your perspective, is that they're targeting the democratization of coaching by using a coaching tool, which actually does real coaching style interactive work with the client to more junior people in a democratizing way. So giving more access to junior folks at a very reasonable cost to work on, whatever their first line supervisor type issues might be, or mid-level management type issues might be. They have really designed their bot to be very interactive in a coaching style. So it is more self-reflective. And then it collects data over time, over 3 months or 6 months, on whether or not the individual has actually made progress, which, I know Nikki Trebanche and others, including yourself, have done some research that some of these coaching bots do actually have some success with helping, especially folks that are working on habits or communication styles or whatever. The opportunity that they're pushing is that the next generation who are very comfortable with technology, that they'll start being comfortable 24 hours a day with this coaching capability. And then when they become more senior, they will want to work with a coach and they will want to work with a real person because they will sort of be, as you said, fatigued with the AI, but they will be primed with the value of coaching. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of solutions like that out there. And even like the big companies, they put that in place. And most of the learning systems are adding their AI coaches now to the whole learning experience and supporting in between. You have, I know Coach Hub just released their new Amy that's integrated into like the whole system as well, whatever you think about this. But this is how it's kind of like really democratized through all sorts of levels within a company. And with Evoge, we've worked on that as well. Nikki's working on this. I know that Harry Novick with Rocky AI, they've been working on a lot of those things. But the time is now. Yeah, let's put it this way. Yeah, so I think it's actually now at the stage where it's going to be integrated. My personal view at the moment is you said something about collecting data. So data is the new goal, is the goal of our times. And who are you going to give that data to? And that's going to be for me the key question. The big corporate companies that have a lot of need for maybe also AI coaches, combining it with human coaches, they will want to own that data. Yeah, or have at least their employees owning that data. And where is the data being stored, how it's collected? I think most of them will build their own. It's easy to build your own AI coach nowadays. Yeah, so I'm consulting a couple of companies on exactly doing that, some big corporates as well, on how to set that up within their own like secure systems, yeah, and within the companies. So the question is really like, how do you integrate that when you, for example, have ChatGPT or Microsoft is in every company. Most companies use Microsoft. And you have your Copilot just sitting there on your desktop, easy access. Mustafa Suleyman, who was the founder of Hello Pi, of Inflection AI. They developed an AI companion already pretty early on. He was the former founder of DeepMind, before they sold to Google Brain. They will create all their AI companions in there. Also people you can just talk to, like AI machines, not people. Yeah, but avatars that you can talk to. It will be your one-stop click from your desktop. And I think that that's really the way it's all headed at the moment.
And will it lead people to ultimately want more opportunity to work with a live coach?
Yes, I have it even with my friends that have been like some of our early testers. They are now all having a personal coach, a human coach as well, because they are using ChatGPT voice thing on their way home from the office, and then they're like, oh yeah, there's an interesting topic. I'm going to take that into my human coaching session, yeah, because I need to dig deeper into that. Yeah, it's something that I don't really want to do in the car or just didn't get any further because AI is really difficult to change a subject into a totally different direction when you had an aha moment because it goes down more narrow into the conversation on a certain topic. It's hard to switch it. And then you still want to discuss it with a human being. No? So I think that even my kids are now, they learned nonviolent communication in school here. I never had that when I was a child. They're used to me asking them all these coaching questions. For them, it's normal to define how it made them feel on a scale from 1 to 10. That's what they're learning. And they sometimes learn it even they have some programs in school where they teach them some kind of coaching skills. Yeah, but more reflective questions. So I think that the new generation, getting back to your question, is having a lot more access to these tools and will then also want to have a more personal coaches. You see it with the ones in the early 20s. They're asking for that already when they're looking for a new job.
That's so interesting to me because it gives me an optimistic perspective, having been a psychologist before I became a coach. And one of the things that I think makes the work that I do with my senior clients sometimes special is that we can diverge very quickly into like what happened when you were a child that may have set in motion a belief system or a pattern that is now showing up 35 years later. And what is the connection between those two things? It might have been a trauma. It might have been a pivotal moment with someone, not even a parent. Everybody thinks it's your parents, but it can be much bigger ecosystem than just your parents.
I lived through the Bosnia, Yugoslavia war here, where Marshall Rosenberg did beautiful work with nonviolent communication. And that's why I think in Europe, a lot of school systems did incorporate that as well. Yeah, and they call it here giraffe and wolf language, and I love it. Yeah, so the kids learn how to talk in giraffe and wolf language and what the difference is.
I mean, we at the Institute of Coaching are investing time and energy and money into building courses for our coaches that are around mental health literacy, for example, and around neurodiversity and around some of the more wellness related aspects of coaching that we haven't so focused on in the past. And there is often this pushback that I get where folks say to me, oh, you're trying to turn all your coaches into therapists. And I'm like, no, we're not. But what we're trying to do is make them more knowledgeable around some of these symptomatic issues that show up around wellness that demand coaches either make a referral to a trained psychotherapist or actually demonstrate that they know a little bit more about how to talk about depression or how to talk about addiction or how to talk about a form of neurodiversity, for example. I think that that's actually a positive evolution for coaches, not to become therapists, but become more broad-based in their ability to reflect on some of these more fundamental, maybe traumas or whatever we want to call them. You know, if people at the earlier stages of their career get access to these tools and they're, as you said, sort of engaged as your kids already are, then when things start to get really difficult for them, the questions like of philosophy, life and death and meaning and what am I doing on this with my life? You don't want to talk to a bot about that. You want to talk to a human being who has some very good training, whether it's psychology training or health and wellness training. So that makes me optimistic. And am I off base?
I think that's totally direction that it's heading, that we can concentrate even more on our personal human side. I don't want to go through all these standard kind of like coaching processes and protocols, but I just want to be there, yeah, for my clients to have the conversation that they need. And I think the rest the bots can do. Everything that can be automated easily will be automated, full stop. When I, as a coach, am informed about the technology that's happening out there, I can also be there for my clients to support them through that. I mean, we see that, and Brené Brown did these beautiful podcasts where she calls it living beyond human scale. Yeah, like our minds, our brains can't cope with what's happening in social media, in technology, and where this is all headed. We need other human beings to connect with, to digest that, to actually think about what does that mean for us? How can we navigate that space in the future? And how can we then as coaches support our clients in that space? Therefore, if we don't know about the technology, how can we do that?
I love that. The opportunity to keep it real between us as humans, no matter how much expertise is being shoved down our throats through whatever tool or how much knowledge. Before we wrap, I'd love for you to reflect briefly on your dialogue with one of my dear friends and one of our most provocative thought leaders.
I knew that this was going to happen.
Of course, because I love her and I love the work that Tatiana Bakarova brings to the coaching space. She said something quite provocative the other day on LinkedIn, and you were very measured in your response. But I think what she's doing for us as coaches is really important, which is to step back and ask ourselves, all right, what's really going on here? And is this really coaching? And what does that mean? And it goes back to probably the beginning of our conversation, where folks like David Drake and other thought leaders are asking us to really deeply reflect on what it means to be a coach. But I'm curious to hear your latest reflections with someone like a provocateur like Tatiana.
I mean, I love, and I think we need more challenges. I think that all, let's say, technology providers or developers need to be challenged. So I love that she's putting these things out there. And she has a lot of valid points, like in the paper that she wrote, or let's call it an opinion article. I just don't think, and that was my main point, that swear words really help. And I don't think that seeing everything so negative might prevent a lot of coaches from actually digging into the topic. And that's what I'm mainly worried about, is that a lot of people will miss that train. And we already see that we already have a huge knowledge gap in our industry. Technology affinity is not one of the strengths of a lot of coaches. Let's put it this way. Yeah, we start with digital literacy, and then AI literacy on top of that is going to make it very difficult for a lot of people to navigate the future. And by preventing them to actually digging into the topic and learning more about this, I think it hinders them to be able to make up their own mind and make their own decision on what they think is acceptable for their coaching style and how they talk and deal with their clients. And that is my main issue about this. Yeah, I think there's a lot of risks, and we need to discuss these risks, and we need to be challenged in many different ways. But don't put people off. That's always what I'm thinking. Yeah, so I would try to encourage them, because honestly, when that paper or like that article was coming out, we have the Vivada coaching community. We try to teach people more about that, to be able to make these informed decisions, to learn how these technologies work. And I heard one of our participants, and she was like, I learned a lot from Tatiana. And when she put that out, she felt like it was cutting all the flowers in her, like blooming flowers in her front yard that she saw popping up, and trying to get a better idea of what this new technology would mean for her coaching future. And then it made me feel so sad that, all these flowers are cut now for her, and that she now needs to regrow them. And that picture was like, but that's not how it should be. Yeah, we should garden them carefully, and we should raise the challenging questions and discuss them, and then navigate that. Yeah, and have these discussions. But I find it difficult to go into extremes. I never like extremes, no matter if it's right or left or wherever. Yeah, I'm Switzerland. I have a Swiss last name. When I was in school, I would always put the Swiss flag on the table, because I did not like people always going into extremes. And I'm like, I'm Switzerland. Let's talk about it. How can we find a middle ground here? Yeah, so
I appreciate that. I think being black and white about any of this is really not going to be helpful, because at the end of the day, like every other technological revolution, whether it was the light bulb or the internet or whatever, it's going to happen. And it's better for us humans to try to integrate, understand, utilize, and put it to work for us, not against us. So I know you need to run because you need to get to the dentist, so I'm going to let you go. But I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to help us kick off this series on AI and coaching. And I really appreciate your perspective. And I hope that folks will follow up with you, because what you're doing with Nikki Treblanche and others in research is really, really important, because it's incredibly valuable for us, as you said, to stay on the train because it's out of the station whether we like it or not. So leave us with the best place for folks to track you down if they're interested in following.
Yes, and they're more than welcome to join our Vivala coaching community as well. We're all rebels in that new revolution, no, that's happening. So,
and where's the best place for them to find you?
Either on LinkedIn or on vivalacoaching.com.
Well, thank you again. And thank you all for listening.
Yes, thank you so much.
We wish you the best in your journey with artificial intelligence, and say hello to whatever you're calling your bot these days.
I will.
We'll see you soon. Thanks again, everyone. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Coaching Revealed, brought to you by the Institute of Coaching. You can learn more about the Institute on our website at instituteofcoaching.org. You can stay up to date with new episodes of our podcast by liking and following Coaching Revealed. You can also find us on social media on LinkedIn, Instagram, and X with the handle Institute of Coaching. We also love hearing from our guests, so please reach out to us with thoughts you have on this episode and any questions you have about coaching. Until next time, this is Emily Tarani with Coaching Revealed.